They're the newest rock stars of a multi-billion-dollar industry. High in protein, low in fat. They're topping the charts for healthy, economical eating. Benjamin Franklin campaigned to make them our national symbol, and their byproducts are revolutionizing the world of power. Turkeys, no longer just for your Thanksgiving table. Get ready to find out more about these amazing birds on How Stuff Works. Turkeys are big birds, and raising them is big business. So big that each year, independent hatcheries incubate more than 35 million eggs each. Many in modern barns the size of football fields. The turkey industry has become such an ingenious, sophisticated business that it caters to the birds in order to produce over 250 million a year. That's pretty much one turkey for every American.
The better environment we can create for them, the better they will perform for us as humans.
And perform they do. Nowadays, turkey products can be found everywhere, even in space.
And we in fact have turkey. This will be turkey. We're saving it, not opening it yet.
Turkeys are processed in several different shapes and tastes to accommodate customer demand. They're cut, dried, sliced, smoked, and glazed, and turned into turkey burgers, turkey bacon, turkey pastrami, and sausage. Oh yeah, and of course you can always buy a nice fat whole bird. And that's not all. Between our insatiable taste for turkey burgers and giant flavored drumsticks, the turkey is going green with a revolutionary alternative for energy fueled by excess turkey waste.
We produce 55 megawatts of renewable energy every single year.
In fact, there's an awful lot to say about this wholly American fowl. Bet you didn't know this. Each year, Americans consume around 5 billion pounds of turkey meat, or an average of 17 pounds per person. So how did turkeys manage to become so popular? Well, it wasn't on their good looks alone. Turkey farmers got smart. They realized there was huge potential to increase the body weight of the birds, especially the more popular breast meat. Combine this with a more health-conscious consumer, and voila!
In the early 80s, late 70s, more people were instructed to maybe adjust their diets a little bit to get away from so much red meat, move a little bit more toward white meat. And a turkey, of course, is white meat.
Turkeys are high in protein, they're low in fat, and they're just a great source of protein, and they're affordable.
Today's popular commercially raised broad-breasted white is one big bird, and it got that way by a combination of selective breeding and diet.
Consumers want a lean product, and so what we've done is that the genetics companies have selected for those kind of traits, and then they get passed down through the system.
Mature male turkeys, called toms, are grown on average to a market weight between 42 and 45 pounds and sold for their body parts like their breasts, thighs, and drumsticks. Hens are smaller, between 12 and 18 pounds, and are mostly sold as whole birds. All turkeys, whether domesticated or wild, are sexually dimorphic. This means the males and females have some distinct differences in their looks and behavior. Males are larger and more colorful than their female counterparts, and they also have a few extra body parts. Because of their size, they generate more body heat than hens. The wattle, the large fold of red-pink fleshy skin on their upper neck, helps release it. So does the snood, the fleshy growth that droops at the base of their beak. Caruncles, brightly colored warty growths on top of their head and along their throat and neck, serve no known function other than to enhance their sex appeal.
One of the characteristics of male turkeys is that they puff up and they strut around with their feathers and show off, really want to get the attention of the female turkeys.
Over the years, the business of raising commercial turkeys has changed dramatically.
Well, you think back to my grandparents' time that raised turkeys. They did several steps in the process on the same farm. Today, it's become very specialized.
These days, to raise commercial turkeys, you need a lot more real estate. Turkeys are conceived at a brooding barn. The hens lay their eggs in the production barn. The eggs are moved to a hatchery where the baby turkeys eventually break out of their shells. The babies, or poults, mature to adulthood in the grow-out barn. And finally, end up at a processing plant. That's a lot of moving in roughly 5 months, which is the average lifespan of a commercially raised broad-breasted white. It's this fast-track life cycle that's key to growing the enormous number of birds needed to meet their popular demand. Turkey sex. Got your attention? Even though hundreds of thousands of eggs are laid and millions of turkeys are hatched every year, conception takes place through a rather awkward, automated process where the male and female birds never come in contact with each other. In Minnesota, they know a thing or two about breeding turkeys because this state has become the largest turkey producer in the U.S. At the Wilmar Poultry Breeding Farm, much like all large commercial operations, baby turkeys are created by artificial insemination. Turns out breeder toms are big boys. They've gotten so big, on average 50+ pounds when they're producing semen, that their big-breasted bodies dwarf their short legs, so that they're unable to mate with females in a natural position. But it's also a numbers game.
If you use artificial insemination, you can actually collect that semen. It can be diluted, and then one male provide enough semen to take and inseminate 60 hens.
Sperm wranglers harvest turkey semen manually. The process is called milking. The semen is then pooled with other batches from other toms and diluted for a bigger yield. Once dilution takes place, the sperm is viable for insemination for 8 to 10 hours. So the hens are ideally inseminated by automated injection within that time frame. Laying hens start producing eggs around their 30th week of life. Fertile hens ovulate between 24 and 28 hours over a 6-month cycle, so they're inseminated on a weekly basis. This method of fertilization has a pretty high success rate, between 90 and 95%, because the sperm will survive inside the hen for up to a week. So a high-producing hen can lay on average 4 eggs every 5 days. We're talking about one hen laying over 100 eggs per cycle. These hens are almost ready to lay their eggs. This means moving to the production barn, where getting tossed out of the nest takes on a whole new meaning.
Each barn consists of approximately about 1,300 nests, which allows the birds to enter the nest for approximately 1 hour to lay their egg.
What happens when time is up? The automated nest ejects the hen and unceremoniously pushes the newly laid egg onto a conveyor belt. When the eggs reach the front of the barn, they're collected, cleaned, and packed up. Meanwhile, the mechanical nest is now free to receive the next bird. During its prime, a period of 6 months, a laying hen will produce over 8 dozen eggs. So how did turkey farmers get such a high rate of performance from their hens? By a little bit of reproductive trickery. In nature, daylight stimulates the reproductive cycle in birds by triggering the release of hormones.
The birds are lit for about 6 to 8 hours a day, and then the rest of the time it's like nighttime for them.
Breeders of domesticated turkeys use white light as a photostimulus to mimic daylight and trick the hens' photoreceptors in their brains into having a continuous breeding cycle all year round. More daylight from artificial light can go a long way for turkey farmers who are willing to take their lead from Mother Nature and shine it on their mother hens. Coming up later, whoever said turkeys were dumb didn't know they're responsible for an incredible fuel breakthrough.
This is the only plant of its kind in North America.
But coming up next, breed lines of turkeys who are definitely no spring chickens.
What if we told...
Now, as every American schoolchild has been taught, no one is exactly sure what the Pilgrims ate when they celebrated their version of Thanksgiving.
Look at all the juice you got in there. Oh, here we go. And it's all...
But to this day, 97% of us make a whole roasted turkey the centerpiece of the Thanksgiving holiday meal by eating 45 million birds each year on this day. Most consumers buy the commercially raised broad-breasted whites. But some turkey connoisseurs pay a premium for birds from the oldest surviving domesticated breed lines. Mary Pittman and her family have been raising turkeys since the 1950s in Central California.
Well, what's so special about the heritage turkeys are that these are the original turkeys before they started crossbreeding them. 10 years ago, there were only 10 Narragansett, which is the oldest breed of heritage turkeys left in the United States. And now we're the largest producer of the Narragansett turkeys, and everyone loves the flavor. It's the original, true turkey flavor.
And these kissing cousins of the wild turkeys still have a lot in common with them.
The heritage turkey, it keeps a lot of its natural instincts. It's always looking around. They will talk to each other, and they will tell each other if there's danger. So they will hide, they will run, and they will protect themselves.
But a domesticated bird is still a domesticated bird, no matter what color its feathers are. And there are a world of differences between them and the wild turkeys.
The domestic turkey is definitely not as smart as your wild turkey. Your wild turkey has to be a little more cunning just to survive. These things are cared for. They got food and water anytime they want. A wild turkey doesn't. They have to use a little more smarts.
Because wild turkeys are more active, they're leaner than commercially raised birds. The males usually weigh between 17 and 25 pounds. They have more streamlined shapes, which makes them more agile and faster. And would you believe these characteristics affect the taste and consistency of the turkey meat you eat? Or in other words, whether you go for the white meat or the dark. Wild turkeys use more myoglobin, the protein that delivers oxygen to the muscles and makes meat turn darker and taste gamey. But broad-breasted whites are raised indoors. They're a lot more docile and don't move around as much, which makes for a lighter color meat that is more tender with a less pronounced flavor. On a broad-breasted white, the only dark meat is found on their most active body parts, the legs and thighs. Everyone probably knows this one. Wild turkeys can fly. Now the big whites have the same ability, but because of their heavier weight and wide breast, even if they attempt to, they don't get very far off the ground. And in response to a predator, look out. A wild turkey can run at speeds up to 20 miles per hour and burst into flight approaching 55 miles per hour in a matter of seconds. So watch out the next time you're driving down a country road. Imagine receiving, sorting, and incubating almost 900,000 turkey eggs a week. And that's an average number for one large hatchery. It's a complex juggling act that involves a combination of science and intuition. Wilmar Poultry in Wilmar, Minnesota is the largest hatchery in the world. Here, over 40 million turkeys make their way out of their shells every year.
A truck comes to the breeder farm twice a week and collects all the eggs and brings them here to the hatchery. And the trucks unload them, and the eggs go directly into the cooler room.
These eggs were laid between 1 and 5 days ago.
They are cooled down to something that's called physiological zero, which means that the growth of the embryo is suspended by low temperature.
Sounds almost space age, but suspending the growth of the embryos buys time for workers in the hatchery to organize them before putting them into incubators. This is no small feat when there are thousands of eggs to sort through.
The eggs can be in this room for up to 10 days before they're put into an incubator.
And how long does it take for an egg to hatch? A little under a month. This is a turkey embryo at 15 days. It gets its major nutrients from the yellow yolk, which contains fat, cholesterol, and proteins. Albumin, or the white, consists of proteins dissolved in water. Its primary purpose is to protect the yolk and provide some nutrition for the growing embryo. A membrane or mucus lining rich in blood vessels helps absorb calcium, which in turn thins out the shell. An embryo breathes through its shell. Carbon dioxide is released from inside the egg, and that allows oxygen in from the outside. At the rounded side of the egg, or blunt, there is a space between the inner and outer membranes, which traps a pocket of air. When the baby turkey is ready to hatch, this is where it will take in its first breath.
When the eggs leave the cooler room, they're brought into this room. And in this room, the egg cases are put onto an incubation rack.
Here are some numbers that will shake some feathers loose. At the Wilmar Hatchery, they incubate over 200,000 eggs a day, 4 days a week. That's roughly 860,000 turkey eggs beginning their cycle. Right now, they have 3.4 million on hand.
This is one of our typical incubators. It holds 24,000 eggs. This is a single-stage incubator, which means all eggs are at the same stage of development. All eggs are set at once and taken out at the same time.
Turkey eggs spend 24 to 25 days in incubators at temperatures from 75 to just over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. During incubation, the eggs are rotated every half hour. This mimics what wild turkey hens do in nature by instinctively sitting on their eggs and moving them a few times a day.
If there is no regular turning, then those extra embryonic membranes are not going to be sufficiently developed and the embryos are not going to hatch.
About 20 days later, they're almost ready to hatch, but there's one more important step.
This is where the transfer process takes place. The eggs are taken from the egg cases and put into hatching baskets for the final 3 days of incubation.
When the eggs reach the final stage of development, the production of carbon dioxide inside the egg gets pretty high. It's the need for oxygen that makes the baby turkey start pecking its way out of the shell after taking their first breath from the blunt, the rounded end of the egg. On the 28th day, the poults are in daylight. They'll stay in the hatchers drying out up to 30 more hours, curiously with no need for food.
They have pretty significant amounts of the nutrient reserves, primarily located in the yolk sac. They can live off the yolk for at least 3 to 4 days after they're hatched.
A discerning eye tells the boys from the girls, and once their sex is determined, the birds are separated. They will remain segregated for the rest of their very short lives. When we return, how turkeys may one day power the planet.
The turkey litter is blown into the boiler through a fan.
But coming up next, keeping them safe from their greatest health threat.
In 3 years of Grand Am racing, Fall Line Motorsports has never won a race. Team owner Mark Bowden has made a huge investment in doing better this year. New drivers, a new head engineer, and a third car. The quest for speed, measured in miles per hour or fractions of a second. Go too slow and you lose the race.
Pushing his way, bulldozing his way through.
Go too fast and you'll never race again. Speed comes down to physics, chemistry, engineering, physical and psychological conditioning. You can't be the fastest until you master the science of speed.
There are over 140 known types of avian influenzas, and turkeys, if you will, are sitting ducks to catch any one of them. Keeping the birds and ultimately consumers safe from dangerous strains of disease is a surprisingly complicated endeavor that requires meticulous attention to detail. So if necessity is the mother of invention, when we're talking about raising thousands of birds in close quarters, it's more likely to be the mother of prevention. because an undetected virus could wipe out an entire flock. So how do turkey farmers manage to keep the birds healthy? First, they have to identify the threat, and the biggest one is people, otherwise known as potential disease carriers. So commercial barns implement strict biosecurity measures to protect the birds from us.
We have mechanisms in place to really protect those birds. And that may be as simple as vaccinating people, having employee programs to keep ill employees out of the facilities, and also just having good protocols or procedures to prevent people who might be carrying things from another barn into the barn that they're entering.
Anyone that comes to one of these huge commercial farms has to shower, then change his or her street clothes for clothing that never leaves the property. And that includes the camera crew. These measures are meant to fend off bacterial yeast molds or a potentially lethal strain of avian flu, which luckily for the farmers and the birds are not the most common type.
The vast majority cause mild respiratory disease, like an upper respiratory infection, head cold sort of thing.
So how do turkey farmers find out if there is an outbreak of avian flu that could threaten a flock if it isn't already obvious? By regular spot checking.
There's two different types of tests. One way is to test at the time the birds go to slaughter. The other way is to see from sick birds what's actually in them right now.
If there is a history of viruses at a farm or in the area, poults are given vaccinations and, if need be, antibiotics before they leave the hatchery and are moved out to grow-out barns. Now, these immunizations are not to be confused with hormones.
There are a lot of myths about turkeys. It's kind of surprising, but one of the most common that I hear is that people believe that turkeys are injected with hormones and steroids.
Hormones are naturally produced chemical messengers that are present in all animals and help control body systems and organs. The addition of hormones can affect growth, but consumers don't have to worry. Hormones are banned in all commercial poultry production in the U.S., which is just another reason why turkey has a top spot on healthy eating menus. You'd think that raising a commercial turkey, whose lifespan is less than a half a year, would be a pretty easy job. But the fact is that more hard work goes into caring for these curious creatures than most people put into their own household pets.
Most of them don't.
Kim Gorens owns one of the largest privately owned turkey operations in Minnesota.
We produce 46 million pounds a year, so we get them day old and raise them up to 22 weeks.
And how do the poults react to their first home?
When they're 1 day old, they actually think you're their mother, so they'll come towards you. You have to be actually careful so that they don't hurt themselves crowding around you. But still, they like to follow you, and my take on it is, show me, Mom. These are 6 days old. They all know where the water is. If they don't find it within 6 days, they die.
Their natural instincts guide them in learning how to drink.
They'll see a little reflection on the water. They'll go peck at it, and you'll see them shake their head like, what was that? But I like it, so they go back at it. That's how they learn to drink.
Turkeys have a relatively high body temperature of 104 degrees Fahrenheit, so they are most comfortable in a warm environment, with temperatures ranging anywhere from 80 to 95 degrees. So barn temperatures are constantly monitored. At 10 days old, the poults at Gorens Brothers have the run of the barn. Then around the 6-week mark, the temperature inside the barn begins lowering in increments for the rest of their stay. That's because as turkeys continue to grow, they generate more body heat and acquire the insulation of feathers. By constantly adjusting the temperature, they're kept more comfortable and are less likely to overheat or catch a chill. Now, we all know we are what we eat. The same goes for turkeys, and since they are bred for size, watching their weight is extremely important. But how do you weigh thousands of poults? With a simple yet ingenious scale system.
It's a platform. They can hop on it. They're attracted a little bit by the reflection again. The scale system monitors the total number of birds that get on the scale and the amount of gain per day.
And what's on the menu? At the Gorins farm, the feed is a combination of 10 to 20 different ingredients, including protein sources, soybean, canola meal, and corn. It's formulated for optimum health and growth and is served directly onto their plates.
The feed enters through here and it drops down into this red feeder. When they're young, we open this up so that it fills up and that the turkeys can find the feed a little bit easier. And then when they get a little bit older, we close this so it doesn't make a mess.
We're reformulating that recipe every couple weeks, so we're feeding the exact nutrients that the turkey needs at that time.
6 weeks later, the young birds are on their way to the grow-out barn, where they will remain until they are all grown up, at around 22 weeks. When we return, home on the free range, the latest trends in growing turkeys.
Well, all my turkeys go in and out of the building as they choose.
But coming up first, turns out babies and turkeys have something in common, where they sit down. Take a look. There are over 10,000 toms or male turkeys in each of these barns. 90,000 birds can be growing out at any one time. Their environment, and especially the air they breathe, is just as important to them as it is to us.
I call them small ostriches. These things here are raised up to 45 pounds at the high side. We market them, say, somewhere between 40 and 42 pounds.
As the turkeys grow larger and eat more, they create a lot of manure and litter, which is a combination of excrement and bedding.
If it gets too moist or the litter starts to get too wet, we got to come in here and adjust things.
What they're adjusting for is the ammonia odor that permeates the barn, which surprisingly isn't as strong as one would imagine. It's caused when the uric acid in the turkey's urine comes in contact with the organic nitrogen in their feces and spilled feed. This combination converts into ammonia. The reason the barns don't smell that bad is because a lot of the astringent ammonia odor is either blown away by the ventilation system or trapped by the bedding, usually made of wood shavings. Excess ammonia in the air and in the turkey's bedding creates some unique concerns for the birds. Turkeys like to sit down, and not unlike a baby sitting in a wet diaper, they can get skin blisters from sitting on wet ammonia-soaked litter. Ammonia can also impair a turkey's sensitive and unique respiratory system, especially if it's combined with a lot of dust.
The turkey's respiratory system is composed of both lungs and air sacs, and they're all interconnected.
Like most birds, turkeys have 9 bellow-like air sacs covered by a thin membrane. The sacs emanate from the lungs and help keep them inflated, along with increasing a bird's oxygen capacity needed for flight and buoyancy. But it's the turkey's abdominal muscles that enable it to breathe by pushing air in and out of the lungs. Yet with this complex lung system, why do turkeys always look like they're out of breath?
They do not have sweat glands. They can't sweat. So when they're breathing, they're also panting as fast as they can, and this panting helps get more air inside to cool them down from the inside out. So that's the only way they can keep themselves cool.
But turkey growers never want the birds to pant excessively.
When you're breathing normally, you breathe through your nostrils. When you pant, you bypass material going into the nostrils, and you're bringing it directly into the windpipe or the trachea. And they may produce some kind of mucus in response to that.
The mucus not only can clog up the respiratory system, but it can trap bacteria that can cause infections that can threaten the livelihood of the flock and the farmer. No doubt you've seen these words when you've shopped for a whole turkey: organic and free range. You might be surprised to know what these turkey labels really mean. Free range pretty much means what it sounds like. The turkeys are allowed to roam outdoors in the fresh air versus spending the majority of their time in barns. But to be certified organic, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, turkeys have to be raised following very specific guidelines.
And the organic turkey now has to be qualified with 3 years of not having anything on the soil or around the bird that has anything to do with herbicides or pesticides. And then also the feed has to be certified to make sure that everything in the feed is organic also.
Mary's Turkeys is a family-run business committed to raising healthy, tasty birds. The farm in Fresno, California is a throwback, a smaller operation that does it all, from raising the poults to processing the full-grown birds. Mary's farm is known for raising old-style birds known as heritage.
We have 3 types of breeds in here. We have a standard bronze, we have a Narragansett, which came out of Narragansett Bay, Rhode Island. We also have another turkey called the New Holland. The New Holland one is the white one you see here. The New Holland is actually more rare today than the Narragansett or the standard bronze. We have about 200 of them here.
And they seem to be birds with big personalities.
They tell us when they're hungry or if there's something wrong. I'm gonna try and get them to talk for you right now. There we go. Come on, kids. Thank you.
So what kind of food keeps these Californian-raised birds fit and vocal?
This is the feed we use for the turkeys. It is a all-vegetarian diet, corn and soybean meal. Then we give them vitamins and minerals and also their calcium and phosphorus so they can grow strong bones.
You could say Mary's turkeys are a bit pampered, right down to their bedding. The more common wood chips aren't good enough for them.
What we like to use is rice hulls. The rice hull is the outside of the rice. They're soft and they don't absorb very much moisture. The moisture goes right on through, so it'll stay nice and dry for the birds.
It takes about 7 months to raise Mary's organic free-range turkeys instead of the usual 5 for the broad-breasted whites. They start raising them in early summer to make a market weight of 20 to 26 pounds for the holiday season.
This turkey right here probably weighs about 9 or 10 pounds. And this is a girl. She'll probably be one of our larger hens for Thanksgiving. She'll weigh probably about 20 pounds.
Because of all that spacious living and the higher cost of feed, Mary's turkeys cost more. Those rarer heritage birds up to $8 a pound, which for her customers is apparently a small price to pay for what they consider to be a gourmet delight.
It's just been phenomenal. It's the most asked for turkey in the United States. I would say the most sought out turkey in the United States.
Mary has become a bit of a turkey celebrity who answers her own hotline.
Part of our family's dedication to this business is forfeiting our Thanksgiving, because my mom has put the 1-800 number on the bag, and so customers can call her and ask her questions.
And I answered the phone. I'm Mary.
They want to know where their food comes from. They want to know the farmer, and they'd like to know that it was humanely raised in a way that they'd like for their family.
Coming up later, drumsticks that are oh so tender.
We got a secret ingredient into it that makes them taste so good.
But when we return, surprising new products being developed from turkey feathers. Giblet gravy and cranberry sauce. And the turkey? It's been raised free range right here on Willie's farm.
Well, we're a small operator. We do everything ourselves. You know, we raise them from scratch and we feed them ourselves.
Every year, Willie raises over 60,000 free-range turkeys on his 400-acre ranch, where there's plenty of shade to keep his birds cool. Willie Bird makes over 100 products, which are cured and hand-packed at the family-owned and operated processing plant. Would you believe their most popular product, smoked turkey legs, gets shipped all the way to Japan?
That's a 2-pound turkey leg right there. We got a secret ingredient into it that makes them taste so good.
Well, the manager is not about to divulge any proprietary secrets, but he did give us a look at how those drumsticks are fixed up.
But this here is our pickle injecting machine, which actually injects the brine into all our meats. These turkey legs will go through this pickle machine where the needles will come down, It'll spurt the brine out at a side angle and inject about a 14% solution of brine into the meat. This is one way of curing, which actually adds our flavor that we want in the turkey leg.
After the turkey legs are pumped full of flavor, they're put into a vacuum-sealed tumbler where they're jumbled around for an hour.
It makes the meat tender. It's just like a tenderizer because they're continually flopping down and hitting each other. And what happens when you pull a vacuum on it like we're doing now, it tends to pull the meat apart so the solution can get into it.
After a cooling period, they're put in a real smokehouse where they burn sweet maple wood chips. Legs and breasts will smoke for a couple of hours. A whole bird up to 12 hours.
We are going to be taking product out that's just finished cooking from the smokehouse. So these are our boneless smoked turkey breast coming out.
Another big seller contains only 1 gram of saturated fat in every 3 slices.
This is our turkey bacon coming off the slicer right now.
They cook up a ton a week. And it goes with one of Willie's favorite meals, breakfast. Because at breakfast, Willie can cook up some eggs.
Turkey eggs, sunny side up, and turkey bacon. These got real tough skin, so you gotta do it over here. See the nice big yolk? Or you could have some little turkey breakfast sausages we make. See, if I got the knack for it, I should be able to turn them like that. Turkey breakfast.
And we've all been told, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Every year, between 2 and 4 billion pounds of poultry feathers become a byproduct of the industry. The majority are sent to processing plants and turned into livestock feed because feathers, like human hair, are mostly made of a protein called keratin. What happens with the rest is exciting news that's breaking new ground in the world of alternate materials. Feathers are one of the most distinguishable features among turkey breeds. For instance, wild and heritage turkeys can have a spectacular array of dark browns, bronze, and purple feathers. But the broad-breasted whites? Well, truth is, white is not even their natural color. They've been bred that way to please the consumers.
They went to the white feathers because when they would be pulling out the feathers, a little brown mark would be left on the original turkeys, and this would make the consumer unhappy.
Turkey feathers are extremely strong and comprised of lightweight fibers, much like nylon and cotton. Because of these properties, scientists are researching and developing new uses for them. In Wheaton, Missouri, Feather Fiber is developing prototype feather products destined for the automotive, construction, and cosmetics industries. Raw feathers obtained from processing plants go through a thorough washing. After they're washed and dried, the feather fibers are separated from the quills. The lighter fibers are vacuumed up into collection bags, while the heavier ones are compacted into 200-pound bales. Compressed and combined with sealants or binding agents, this new feather fiber material hopefully will replace traditional wood and plastic composite materials. Prototype products include this sample block that will be used for soundproofing and this battery mount for trucks. Its lightweight and exceptional strength makes it a good candidate to replace a not-so-eco-friendly molded plastic part. Who says you can't teach an old bird new tricks? Coming up next, just when you think you've seen it all, watch how this innovative power plant turns turkey litter into renewable energy.
This area will hold about 10,000 tons of turkey litter.
With the increasing need for the world to create alternate sources of fuel and power, you'll be surprised to find out what the turkey industry has to offer as a practical and amazing solution. Every year, Minnesota produces 1.7 million tons of turkey litter. Traditionally, this waste would be spread on fields to fertilize crops. But now, there's a groundbreaking alternative to deal with this waste. The surprising solution? turn it into power. Fibromin Power Plant in Benson, Minnesota is North America's first and the world's largest power plant fueled by turkey litter.
We combust somewhere in the area of 500,000 tons of poultry litter annually to make about 55 megawatts of renewable energy.
What does that mean in practical terms? Not only does the plant run entirely on the energy it produces, it also provides power to roughly 50,000 homes. The operation relies on turkey farms across the state. Every day, 140 semis pick up over 3,000 tons of turkey waste. I know what you're thinking. Doesn't all that litter stink? Well, it may not be that bad in the barns, but when there is a 25-ton heap, it smells so bad that the truckloads are sealed with an airtight metal cover so that they don't stink up local neighborhoods en route to the plant. The storage building holds up to 10,000 tons of waste at one time. The smell inside is so powerful, it burns the eyes and will stay enclosed for days. That's why the building is kept at negative pressure, a kind of continuous vacuum state. Imagine a super bathroom ventilation fan that sucks out the offending odors and keeps them trapped inside the building. The biomass travels on a conveyor belt to the boiler building.
The feeders drop down through chutes, and the fuel, our turkey litter, is blown into the boiler, and it's fed onto a grate. In on the grate, there's a vibrating section that will allow the fuel to be stoked and keep the fire burning.
The litter is combusted at more than 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, which heats water in a giant boiler. It produces steam that turns a turbine connected to a generator, which creates electricity. But doesn't burning all that litter create pollution? Actually, no. Fibromin utilizes advanced emission control equipment, which makes the plant virtually pollution-free. What you see coming out of the smokestack is mostly water vapor and a minimal amount of CO2. The process does create a lot of ash, but it turns out that it's rich in nutrients and recoverable for use in fertilizers.
It has potassium and phosphorus and micronutrients that are still good for the soil.
It's a good example of the carbon cycle. Burning that litter gives off some CO2 that is taken in by plants, which are also fed by fertilizer made from the residual ash. Feed made from the crops helps nourish the next generation of birds.
Renewable energy is a great way to improve the environment and take care of what people need.
From the breeder farm to the hatchery, to the grow-out barn and the processing plant, a turkey takes an amazing, rapid journey to reach our tables. And it looks like there's no slowing it down.
The future of the U.S. turkey industry, I think, is very exciting. There's been a huge influx of turkey on menus in a lot of different settings, whether it be fast food or mainstream restaurants. As the consumer becomes more and more health conscious, turkey, I think, will fit well within their diets.
As we are able to, over time, learn how we can apply the technology in ways that makes truly sense, I think it will make healthier birds.
Now every year, there's one bird at Thanksgiving that takes a lucky detour. It's dropped off at the White House for the first family's dinner. But the good news for this Tom, it's a long-standing tradition to receive a presidential pardon.
Now let's pardon this bird.